Rain slashed across Legos like broken glass as a police van fishtailed onto the dirt road. In the warehouse ahead, a single bulb swung on-off, strobing over Amara Okoye's wrists, chafed raw against coarse rope. Outside, Kola Adeyemi stood in his drenched security uniform, heartbeat drumming like talking drums in a storm. "Move," the inspector barked. Boots pounded. A padlock screamed. From the shadows, a phone flashed a message from Uncle Benedict. "She's gone, buried by tradition." But Kola knew a lie when it smelled like fear. He kicked the door. The bulb froze, revealing Amara's eyes wide, with the kind of terror that brands a soul. Behind Kola, sirens wailed. Ahead, betrayal waited with a grin. Love had drawn him here. Principal would decide if either of them walked out. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Drop your city and local time in the comments. And if you love powerful African stories with real heart, subscribe so you don't miss the next twist. The night before the storm, the city of Lagos glittered like 1,000 restless diamonds, a place where fortunes changed hands faster than the wind could shift direction. In the middle of it all stood Eco Atlantic Estate, a walled paradise for the wealthy, where palm trees lined the roads like quiet sentinels. At its giant black gate, a young security guard named Kola Adeyemi stood tall under the glow of a flickering lamp. His uniform was plain, his shoes dusty, and his hands calloused. No one looking at him would have guessed that the man they called the gatekeeper was actually the only son of one of Lagos's most powerful families. He had chosen this disguise. He wanted to know how people treated a man when he had nothing to offer. After years of being surrounded by fake smiles and hollow affection, Kola had learned that wealth attracted beauty but not honesty, admiration but never love. So he walked away from his mansions, his cars, his status, and put on a cheap uniform standing guard for 12 hours a day, earning barely enough for bread and water. Across the road from the estate, under a tin roof patched with rust and hope, sat Mama Ngozi's food place. The smell of fried plantain, pepper stew, and rice drifted across the street like an unspoken invitation. Inside, pots rattled oil, hissed, and laughter bubbled like the stew itself. Amara Okoye, Mama Ngozi's niece, moved between tables with the grace of someone who had learned patience from pain. Amara had been orphaned since she was 10. Her uncle Benedict and his wife Ngozi took her in not out of kindness, but because free labor was cheaper than hiring help. From dawn till dusk, she cooked, cleaned, and served customers. Still, she never complained. Her only joy was cooking, she said. Food carried memory, and kindness was the spice that made it real. Every afternoon around 1 o'clock, Kola would appear at the restaurant. He always ordered the same thing, small rice, no meat. He'd pay in worn Naira notes and thank Amara with quiet sincerity. At first, she thought he simply disliked meat, but after several visits, she noticed the truth: he couldn't afford it. His plate looked bare beside the steaming platters of other customers. One day, curiosity got the better of her. As she ladled stew over his rice, she whispered, "Oga, why, you know, like meat?" Her tone was soft, teasing. He smiled faintly, eyes tired but kind. "Because meat is for kings," he said, "and I'm just a gatekeeper." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to the rain tapping the roof, thinking about that young man who stood all day in the heat, who never complained, never begged. She knew what it felt like to be invisible, to work hard, and still be looked down upon. The next afternoon when Kola returned, Amara added a small piece of meat to his plate. She did it quickly before Mama Ngozi could see. When she placed the dish before him, she leaned close and said, "Don't tell anyone." Kola looked up in surprise. For a moment their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them. Unspoken gratitude, quiet warmth. He took a bite, and for the first time in years, something as simple as food felt sacred. It became a silent ritual. Every day Amara slipped an extra piece of meat onto his plate, and every day he pretended not to notice until one evening, as she wiped down the tables, he waited outside the shop. The sun was sinking behind the city skyline, painting the sky orange and gold. When she stepped out, he cleared his throat nervously. "I just wanted to say, thank you," he said. She laughed lightly. "It's only meat." He shook his head. "It's not just meat. It's kindness. That's something people forget how to serve." For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said playfully, "Well, you can repay me when you become a rich gatekeeper." He laughed, though her words hit deeper than she could imagine. If only she knew. That night, he walked back to his tiny rented room, rain starting to fall. He felt a warmth he hadn't felt in years, not from the food, but from being seen for the first time since he'd left his old life behind. The next day, as Amara slipped another piece of meat into his meal, her cousin Chioma walked in. Chioma, her aunt's only daughter, was used to fine clothes, flashy wigs, and easy attention. Her eyes immediately narrowed. "Who's that food for?" she demanded. Amara froze, then said softly, "For the gatekeeper." Chioma gasped theatrically. "That poor man, you're giving him free meat. Are you in love with a security guard, please?" "Chioma," Amara whispered, "don't tell Auntie." Chioma smirked. "You think I'll keep quiet while you waste our meat on a broke man? Watch and see." Before Amara could stop her, Chioma stormed out, shouting for her mother. Moments later, Mama Ngozi marched in her face, red with fury. "What is this nonsense I'm hearing?" she roared. "You're stealing my meat to feed that gatekeeper." Amara tried to explain, but before she could finish, the slap landed sharp, humiliating. "You useless girl," her aunt yelled. "I feed you and you use my food to feed a man poorer than you." Mama Ngozi grabbed the plate and dragged Amara toward the door. Outside, the sky had darkened again. Thunder grumbled like a warning. They crossed the road and marched to the estate gate. Other workers turned to watch. Kola looked up from the logbook just in time to see Amara being pulled by the arm. "Madam, what's wrong?" he asked, stepping forward. Mama Ngozi flung the plate at his feet. Rice and stew splattered across his shoes. "You are what's wrong," she spat. "Didn't I warn you people not to mess with my niece? Poor man trying to drag her down to your level." Kola clenched his jaw, but said nothing. Amara's eyes filled with tears. "Madam, I didn't ask her for anything," he said quietly. "Liar," Mama Ngozi shouted. "If I ever see you near her again, I'll make sure you both end up behind bars." She yanked Amara away, leaving Kola standing there drenched and humiliated. But beneath his calm surface, something burned a quiet fury at how cruelty always wore the mask of righteousness. That night, Amara lay on the kitchen floor, her cheeks still stinging. Upstairs, Chioma giggled with her mother about teaching the poor girl a lesson. But Amara wasn't thinking about them. She was thinking about Kola, the look in his eyes when he told her not to cry. And though she didn't know it yet, that moment, the night of humiliation of rice scattered at the feet of a hidden billionaire, was the spark that would ignite a fire no lie, no cruelty could ever put out. Lagos woke up under a sky the color of burnt smoke, restless and thick with gossip. The entire block around Eco Atlantic was talking about the girl who gave free meat to a gatekeeper. Some laughed, some sneered, others pitied her. But inside Mama Ngozi's restaurant, the air was colder than the Harmattan breeze. Pots clanged, spoons hit bowls. Every sound carried tension. Amara worked silently, her eyes swollen from crying through the night. She wanted to disappear, but she couldn't. Her aunt's voice carried from the front of the shop. "If you break even one plate, I'll deduct it from your next pay, though I should fire you already." "Yes, Auntie," she whispered, stirring the stew. Her cousin Chioma sat near the counter, scrolling her phone, grinning. She had recorded a short video the day before Amara being dragged through the street, Mama Ngozi shouting, Kola standing helpless. Now the clip was trending on TikTok Lagos with the caption, "Poor gatekeeper versus rich girls meet true love or free lunch." The comments stung more than the slap. "Nah, this kind of girl way fall moo-moo for broke guy. That man better go guard sense instead of gate. She pity him today, tomorrow he go beggar for rent." Each line was a knife twisting deeper. At the estate gate, Kola pretended not to hear the workers whisper. They mocked quietly as they passed. "Gatekeeper Don turn lover boy," one joked. "Hope, madam, no sack you for romance duty," another teased. Kola forced a smile, nodding politely. But inside he was boiling not with shame, but with helplessness. The disguise he had chosen now became a prison. He wanted to tell them all that he could buy the estate they were guarding 100 times over, but that would defeat the purpose of his mission to find love unblinded by gold. That afternoon, Amara arrived at the restaurant late. Her aunt glared. "You think you can keep customers waiting because of your little love story? I'm sorry, Auntie," she murmured. "Sorry doesn't cook rice," the woman snapped. "Go clean table 3. Amara obeyed. As she wiped the wooden table, she caught sight of Kola standing outside the window, hands in pockets, waiting. Her heart skipped. He shouldn't have come back, at least not so soon after yesterday's shame. But there he was, standing tall, calm, almost proud. She hesitated, then poured stew into a plastic bowl, added rice, and this time no meat. She carried it out quietly, head low. "Good afternoon," she said softly. "Good afternoon," he replied. They stood in awkward silence as the city buzzed around them, horns blaring, voices, shouting, generators rumbling. "I shouldn't have caused trouble for you," he said finally. "I didn't mean for things to get this bad." Amara shook her head quickly. "It's not your fault." Auntie was already angry before. "I just made it worse," Kola smiled faintly. "Still, I'm sorry." Her lips curved into a sad smile. "You have nothing to be sorry for." Then before he could answer, she reached into her pocket and brought out a small folded paper, carefully protected from oil stains. Here, she said, pressing it into his hand. What's this? A recipe, she said, for pepper stew. My mother's recipe. She used to say, if someone eats your food and smiles, you've already changed their day. Kola unfolded the paper. The handwriting was neat, the ink faded at the edges. He read the first line aloud. 2 cups of patience, 1 spoon of kindness. He chuckled softly. This doesn't sound like an ordinary recipe. She met his eyes. It isn't. At that moment, the sound of Mama Ngozi's sharp voice sliced through the air. Amara, she flinched. I have to go, she whispered, backing away. Kola nodded slowly. Thank you, he said, holding the paper like something sacred. When she disappeared inside, he turned and stared at the gate ahead of him, the symbol of his double life. It separated 2 worlds, the poor and the powerful, the hungry and the fed, the loved and the lonely. That night, Lagos slept under lightning. Thunder rolled across the lagoon like angry drums. In her small corner of the house, Amara knelt by the window, whispering prayers for courage. Upstairs, Uncle Benedict and Auntie Ngozi argued over money again. She could hear every word. You spoil that girl too much, he barked. Now she's giving out food for free. She's nothing but bad luck, her aunt snapped. If not for my kindness, she'd still be begging in the street. Kioma's voice floated in lazy and mocking. Mama, maybe she thinks that Gatekeeper will marry her one day. Imagine Mrs. Gatekeeper. They all laughed. Amara covered her ears and bit her lip until she tasted blood. She wanted to scream, but silence was safer. At the same hour, Kola sat alone in his small rented room near Makoko Lagoon. The sound of rain leaked through the tin roof. He unfolded the recipe again, tracing Amara's handwriting with his thumb. The words blurred in the candlelight. 2 cups of patience, 1 spoon of kindness. He smiled faintly. It reminded him of his mother, Lady Funky Adeyemi, who used to volunteer at soup kitchens before wealth turned her soft hands into cold marble. He missed those days, the smell of jollof rice, the laughter of strangers, the sincerity of poverty. He whispered to himself, maybe I'm not looking for love. Maybe I'm looking for the part of me money stole. The next morning, something unexpected happened. As Kola reported for duty, he noticed a delivery truck parked outside the gate. The driver stepped out and handed him a brown envelope. From Madam, he said. Which Madam? Kola asked. Mama Ngozi. Said you know yourself. Puzzled. Kola opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper and a few crumpled naira notes. The message was short. Stay away from Amara. Last warning. He folded the note, carefully exhaled, and tucked it in his pocket. Later that day, he saw Amara sweeping the front of the restaurant. She looked exhausted. Her wrists had small bruises where her aunt had gripped her too tightly. When she saw him, she almost turned away, but his gentle smile stopped her. I got your aunt's message, he said quietly. Her face paled. She sent you something, he nodded. Don't worry, I won't cause more trouble for you. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know, I swear. I believe you, he said, stepping closer. You've done enough already. For a second, they just stood there, 2 souls from different worlds, both trapped by circumstance. Then a sudden shout broke the moment. Amara! It was her uncle's voice. He strode toward them, belt in hand. So this is where you spend your time, flirting with guards instead of working. Amara froze. Kola instinctively stepped in front of her. Sir, please, the belt cracked across his shoulder before he could finish. The pain shot through him, but he didn't move. You'll regret this. Uncle Benedict yelled, grabbing Amara's wrist. Let's go, Kola caught her gaze, eyes wide with apology, fear, and something else, the silent plea to hold on. As they disappeared around the corner, rain began to fall again, soft at first, then heavy, washing the street clean of footprints, but not of memory. Kola stood alone in the storm shirt, soaked the paper recipe in his hand, bleeding ink into the rain. The words faded, but one line remained clear. Kindness is never wasted. He closed his fist around it, whispering to the wind, I'll prove it. That night, he opened his hidden locker beneath the bed. Inside lay an old ID card, Kola Adeyemi Director, Adeyemi Holdings, and a key to a Rolls-Royce gathering dust in his father's mansion. He stared at them for a long moment, torn between 2 selves. Then he whispered, not yet. She must love me for who I am first. Outside, lightning flashed across the lagoon like a warning from the gods. The drums of fate had started playing, and Lagos, as always, was listening. The morning after the storm, Lagos carried the smell of wet dust and new beginnings. But for Amara Okoye, there was no such thing as a new beginning, only the long repetition of chores, scolding, and silence. Her aunt Mama Ngozi barked orders from the front of the restaurant, while Amara stirred pots, eyes heavy from lack of sleep. The memory of Uncle Benedict whipping cola in front of everyone still burned behind her eyelids. Her cousin Chioma strutted past wearing a bright yellow dress. So she said, voice dripping with mock pity, "How's your poor Prince Charming? Still guarding gates or guarding your shame?" Amara ignored her, but her hands trembled. Chioma smirked and moved closer. "You know, if you had any sense, you'd stop dreaming about love and start chasing money. The world doesn't reward kindness, it eats it," Amara whispered. "Then maybe I'll let it eat me. Better that than becoming you." Chioma's face hardened. "Keep talking like that and you'll see." She turned sharply and stomped away, heels clacking against the tiled floor like gunshots. Outside, Kola leaned against the estate gate, exhaustion written on his face. He hadn't slept properly in 2 nights. His shoulders still throbbed from the beating, but he didn't care. He had faced humiliation before in business meetings and boardrooms filled with men who smiled to his face and mocked him behind his back. But this was different. It wasn't about pride, it was about her. He glanced at the folded piece of paper in his pocket, Amara's recipe for kindness. The ink had almost washed away in the rain, but the words lived inside him now. 2 cups of patience, 1 spoon of kindness. Stir with hope, serve with courage. Around noon he saw her again. She was crossing the road with a tray of food balanced on one hand, her scarf flapping in the wind. He knew he shouldn't approach, not after what had happened, but something inside him rebelled against reason. He stepped forward. "Amara." She froze mid-step, heart racing. "Kola, you shouldn't. I needed to see you," he interrupted. "To make sure you're okay." Her lips trembled. "I'm fine." He could see she wasn't. Her eyes were red, her wrist bruised, but she still stood tall, dignity wrapped around her like armor. "Why do you keep coming back?" she asked quietly. "You saw what my uncle did. You saw how my family is." "Because I can't stay away," Kola said simply. "Because you remind me of something I thought I lost." "What's that?" He smiled faintly. "My faith in people." Amara looked away, blinking hard. "Don't say things like that. You don't know me." "I know enough," he said. "You gave food to someone who couldn't pay for it. You spoke to a man everyone else ignores. You risked punishment for a stranger. If that isn't goodness, what is?" Her throat tightened. For a moment the world went quiet, just the hum of traffic and the distant call of hawkers selling oranges. Then, as if reality suddenly remembered them, the door of the restaurant burst open. Mama Ngozi's sharp voice cut through the air. "Amara, what are you doing there again?" Amara jumped. Kola stepped back. "Go inside now," her aunt barked. "And you," she pointed at Kola, "if I ever catch you near my niece again, I'll make sure security drags you out of this estate for good." Kola clenched his fist but kept his voice steady. "Ma, with all due respect yourself," she snapped, turning away. "You're lucky I don't call the police." Amara's eyes pleaded, "Please don't argue." Kola nodded slightly, letting her go. That night the moon hung low over the lagoon, pale and watchful. Inside her small room, Amara knelt beside her bed, whispering prayers her late mother had taught her. "God, if love is a sin, forgive me, but if it is your test, give me strength." Across town, Kola sat on the edge of his narrow bed, scrolling through photos on his hidden phone, images of board meetings, charity events, luxury cars. He paused at one, a picture of him and his father at the Adeyemi Foundation's opening ceremony. Both were smiling, dressed in agbada. His father's words echoed in his mind. "To lead others, you must first learn humility. Wealth without empathy is empty noise." He whispered, "I'm trying, Father. But humility hurts more than I expected." The next morning, something unusual happened. Mama Ngozi's restaurant was busier than ever. The rumor of the poor gatekeeper and the kind girl had drawn curious customers. Some came to mock, others to see the girl who'd become a meme. "Is she the one?" someone asked, pointing. "Yes," another replied. "The moo-moo that feeds her boyfriend meat." Amara's face burned with shame, but she kept serving. She wanted to disappear into the pots. Every laughter felt like a slap. Then around midday, silence fell. The door opened and Kola walked in, still wearing his gatekeeper's uniform, head high. The whole room stared. Mama Ngozi's eyes widened. "What are you doing here?" "I came to buy food," he said calmly. "Get out," she barked. He ignored her, stepped to the counter and looked straight at Amara. "Please, I'd like rice and stew. No meat." Her hands shook as she served the plate. "Kola, you shouldn't have." "It's all right," he said softly. "Let them talk. Let them laugh. We both know who we are." For a moment the restaurant fell silent. Even the oil stopped sizzling. Then Chioma's voice sliced through the stillness. "I beg somebody record this. The gatekeeper Don come back for his princess." Laughter erupted again. Kola took the plate and turned toward the door. Before leaving, he paused. "Madam," he said, addressing Mama Ngozi, "you run a fine place. You should treat your workers better. Kindness doesn't reduce profit." Then he walked out calm as a man who carried a secret the world couldn't touch. Amara stood frozen, tears threatening. She didn't know whether to feel proud or terrified. Her aunt's glare was deadly. "You see what you've caused again? I didn't ask him to come," she cried. "Enough," her aunt shouted. "From today, you don't step outside unless I say so. You hear me, yes, Auntie?" That night, the street outside the restaurant grew quiet. Lagos never truly sleeps, but there are hours when even the noise hesitates. In those hours, Kola waited at the back alley behind the estate, the same spot where the talking drums of fate had first whispered between them. He waited, unsure if she'd come. Minutes crawled by. Then footsteps. Amara appeared, clutching a shawl around her shoulders. Her face lit up faintly when she saw him. "You're crazy," she whispered. "If my uncle sees me, then we'll both get in trouble," he said, smiling. She shook her head, half in fear, half in disbelief. "Why risk it? Because you did first," he said simply. The moon slipped from behind a cloud, spilling silver light over them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Amara exhaled shakily. "They'll never let us be together. My uncle, he'll kill me if he finds out I'm here." Kola took a slow breath. "Then maybe we should stop hiding." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. He wanted to tell her everything, that he wasn't really poor, that he had the power to buy her freedom with a single call. But he stopped himself. Not yet. Not until she loved him, not the billionaire behind him. "Just trust me," he said. "No matter what happens, I won't let them hurt you again." Amara looked at him for a long time, as if searching his soul for truth. Then she nodded slowly. "I believe you." The wind picked up, carrying the faint rhythm of talking drums from somewhere distant, like a promise carved in sound. And for the first time in a long while, both of them smiled. They didn't know it yet, but that smile was the last piece they'd share before the storm that would test everything: love, truth, and the price of kindness itself. The next few days dragged like a chain. The rain came back, falling in long gray curtains that made the city look like it was drowning in its own secrets. At Mama Ngozi's restaurant, Amara's world had shrunk to three things: the clatter of pots, the smell of stew, and the weight of silence. Her aunt hardly spoke to her, except to shout. Her uncle Benedict returned home from work each evening with the smell of beer and the sharp voice of a man who believed fear was love. Every night, Amara sat by the window, watching lightning sketch crooked lines across the sky. She thought of Kola, his calm eyes, his quiet laughter, his words that made her heart tremble. She hadn't seen him in 3 days. He hadn't come to the restaurant. She wondered if he had finally given up, if the shame had been too much. But what she didn't know was that across the road behind the iron gates of Eco Atlantic Estate, Kola was fighting his own battle. His uniform was soaked, his heart restless. He kept hearing his father's voice in his mind. "Kola, humility is not weakness. It is strength under control." But what was the use of humility when it let good people suffer? That evening, as he ended his shift, he walked to a small wooden bench behind the guardhouse, the same bench where Amara had once met him in secret. He sat there staring at the recipe she'd written him. It was damp now, edges torn, but one line still clear. "Serve with courage," he whispered. "Maybe that's what I'm missing." Then he pulled out his phone, the one no one knew about, the one connected to a name that could change everything: Kola Adeyemi, CEO Adeyemi Holdings. He hesitated for a long moment, thumb hovering over the screen before locking it again. "Not yet," he muttered. "Not until she's safe." Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, Amara's hands moved automatically, stirring stew, as if her body remembered how to live, even when her spirit didn't. The place was crowded, the noise deafening. A businessman at table 4 complained his food was cold. A child spilled Fanta on the floor. And above it all, Mama Ngozi's voice boomed. "Amara, faster." "Are you trying to drive customers away?" "Yes, Auntie," she said softly. Chioma stood at the counter, scrolling through Instagram, pretending to help. She whispered loudly to a friend on the phone. "That foolish gatekeeper hasn't shown his face since my mother warned him. I guess he finally realized who's out of his league." Amara heard her but said nothing. At closing time, when everyone left, she gathered her courage and asked, "Auntie, may I go buy soap from the shop across the street?" Her aunt frowned suspiciously. "Soap at this hour? It's for tomorrow's washing." "I forgot earlier." "Be quick," Mama Ngozi said. "And don't you dare talk to that man again, you hear me?" "Yes, Auntie." Amara slipped into the rain. Her dress clung to her body as she crossed the road, but she didn't go to any shop. Her feet carried her straight to the back of the estate, where the old bench sat under a mango tree. And there, just as the thunder rolled, she saw him. Kola stood with his back to her, looking out at the shimmering city lights beyond the wall. She hesitated, then called softly, "Kola." He turned, eyes widening in surprise before softening into relief. "Amara," he breathed. "You came. I couldn't stay away," she said. "I was afraid something had happened to you." He smiled faintly. "Nothing I can't handle." For a long moment, they just stood there, the rain whispering around them. Then she stepped closer. "Kola, can I ask you something? Anything? Why are you like this?" He blinked. "Like what's so calm, so patient? Even when they insulted you, even when my uncle hit you, you didn't fight back." Any other man would have shouted, pushed back, done something. He looked away, because fighting doesn't always prove strength. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is stay silent when pride wants to scream. She stared at him. "You talk like someone who's seen more than this street." He chuckled softly. "Maybe I have." The wind shifted, carrying the smell of wet earth and fried plantain from a nearby stall. Amara shivered. Kola noticed and took off his jacket, placing it over her shoulders. "You'll catch cold," he said. She held the jacket close, eyes glistening. "You always do that. What care for others even when you're the one who needs help?" He smiled, and for a second the world seemed to hold its breath. "Amara," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." She looked up, heart pounding. "What is it?" He hesitated. The words, "I'm not who you think I am," sat on his tongue, heavy as truth. But before he could speak, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his landlord. "You have 3 days to pay or move out." His shoulders stiffened. She noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" he sighed. "It's nothing. Just rent issues." Her face fell. "You might be evicted." He nodded slowly. "Maybe. But I'll figure something out." Amara bit her lip. "I wish I could help." He smiled gently. "You already have." But she wasn't satisfied. The thought of him sleeping on the street clawed at her. That night, as she lay awake on her mat, her mind churned. Her uncle always kept cash in a small drawer in his room, money from his beer sales. He would never notice if a few notes went missing. She told herself it was only a loan. She'd pay it back somehow. Her hands shook as she crept down the hallway. The house was quiet except for the rhythmic snoring of her aunt. Candlelight flickered through the curtains. The wooden drawer squeaked as she opened it. Inside lay bundles of naira wrapped with rubber bands. Her breath caught. She took a few notes, just enough for rent, and pressed them under her wrapper. Then she tiptoed out, heart thudding. The next morning she slipped away early and hurried to the estate gate. The streets glowed gold under the first light of dawn. Kola was already there, adjusting his uniform. When he saw her, surprise flickered across his face. "Amara, you're here so early." "I had to see you," she said breathlessly. She looked around to make sure no one was watching, then pulled the money from her wrapper. "Here," she whispered. He frowned. "What's this? For your rent?" she said. "Please take it before your landlord throws you out." He stared at the cash, then at her. "Where did you get this?" She hesitated. "From my uncle's drawer." Kola's expression changed instantly. Disbelief, then disappointment. "You stole it." Her voice cracked. "I only borrowed it. I'll put it back." "I couldn't watch you suffer." Kola gently pushed the money back toward her. "Amara, no." "Why?" she pleaded. "It's just money." He shook his head slowly. "No, it's more than that. If you steal for love, it stops being love. It becomes debt." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was trying to help you." He reached for her hand. "I know, but not like this. Please return it before anyone finds out." Her shoulders trembled. "They'll kill me if they do." "Then we'll pray they don't," he said softly. "But your peace is worth more than my rent." She looked at him for a long, aching moment. "You're too good for this world, Kola Adeyemi," she whispered. He froze at the sound of his full name, but before he could ask how she knew, she added, "You act like someone who doesn't belong here. But maybe that's why I trust you." Then she turned and ran. Later that day, the world came crashing down. When she returned home, Uncle Benedict was waiting in the sitting room, belt in hand, eyes blazing. "Amara?" Her knees weakened. "Yes, Uncle, I left money on my table last night. This morning it's gone." "You want to explain?" Her mouth went dry. I don't know." The slap came hard. "Liar." He grabbed her arm, searched her pockets, and when he found the crumpled notes, his fury exploded. "You thief, I should never have kept you here." Aunt Ngozi appeared in the doorway, pretending shock but hiding satisfaction. "You see, I told you that girl will bring disgrace." Uncle Benedict lifted his belt again. "You're too young for love, yet you steal for a man. I'll fix you." The belt lashed her back once, twice, until her knees gave way. Through tears, she cried, "I only wanted to help." "Silence," he roared. "You'll marry Chief Emma next week." Let him deal with your stubbornness, she gasped. No, please, but Mercy was not in that house. As she lay on the cold floor that night, pain searing through her body, the words Kola had spoken echoed in her mind. Your peace is worth more than my rent. She clutched her chest, whispering through sobs. Then what is my peace worth now? Outside, the rain began again, pounding against the roof like fists from heaven. And somewhere beyond the estate wall, Kola stood in the downpour, fists clenched, vowing, I will not let her face this alone. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It fell like punishment, flooding the streets of Lagos until gutters overflowed, and market women lifted their baskets onto tables to keep them dry. To most, it was just another storm. But to Kola Adeyemi, it felt like an omen, as if heaven itself was warning him that time was running out. He hadn't seen Amara since that morning at the gate. Every hour that passed twisted like a knife in his chest. She hadn't returned to the restaurant, and the rumors spreading among the estate workers grew darker with each telling. I heard her uncle locked her up, one guard whispered. They say she's getting married to some old chief, another added. Kola's fists clenched. Chief Emma, he muttered, remembering the name he'd overheard before. The man was notorious, a businessman with too much money and too little conscience, known for marrying girls young enough to be his daughters. That evening, Kola couldn't sit still. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the air smelled of wet earth and fear. He waited until his shift ended, then slipped out of the estate through the back path that led to the old neighborhood where Amara's family lived. The road was quiet except for the croaking of frogs and the hiss of distant generators. When he reached the house, the windows were dark. He circled to the back, careful not to make noise, and found the small window of the storage room where Amara used to sleep. He tapped the metal bars lightly. Amara, he whispered. For a moment, there was only silence. Then from inside, a weak voice answered. Who's there? It's me, he said, heart pounding. The window creaked open just an inch, and a pale face appeared. Amara's eyes were swollen, her lip cut. She looked exhausted, like someone who had cried every tear she owned. Kola, she breathed, disbelief and relief mixing in her voice. You came. He swallowed hard. Of course I came. I couldn't find you for days. They locked me in, she whispered. They said I disgraced the family. I'm not allowed out until the wedding. The wedding, his chest tightened. When tomorrow? Her voice cracked on the word, tomorrow morning. Kola's mind raced. Tomorrow, that meant tonight was his only chance. You can't marry that man, he said fiercely. You don't love him. She laughed bitterly. You think love matters to them. To my uncle, I'm just a debt to be paid. He gripped the window bars, his knuckles white. Then I'll pay it myself. Whatever he's owed, I'll handle it. Amara shook her head. You can't. He doesn't want money. He wants control. He'd rather sell me than admit he's wrong. Kola's heart pounded. He looked around as if expecting an answer to appear from the darkness. Then we'll run, he said suddenly. You and me. Right now. Her eyes widened. Run where anywhere. I have enough saved to get us out of Lagos. I'll protect you. She smiled sadly. You can't even protect yourself. My uncle would send the police after us, and you'd lose your job. Kola's jaw tightened. If only she knew who I really was. Listen to me, he said, voice low and urgent. You told me once that kindness isn't wasted. Let me prove that. I won't let you marry a man who'll break you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Kola, you don't understand. If I try to leave, he'll kill me. I heard him say it. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain dripped steadily from the roof. Somewhere in the distance, a baby cried. Then Kola leaned closer to the bars. Amara, he said quietly, I need you to trust me. Tomorrow morning before the ceremony, I'll come for you. She stared at him. How? You have no power. No one will listen to a gatekeeper. He smiled faintly, something unreadable in his eyes. Maybe it's time they did. Amara wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But her heart was too tired to hope. Please don't do anything foolish, she whispered. If something happens to you because of me, nothing will happen, he said softly. I promise. He reached through the bars and took her trembling hands. Close your eyes. She obeyed. He squeezed her fingers. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember this moment. Remember that someone in this world sees you, truly sees you, and will never let go. Her tears fell silently as thunder rumbled above. I trust you, she whispered. He released her hands gently. Get some rest. Tomorrow, everything changes. As he walked away through the rain, Kola's mind was already made up. The disguise, the lies, the charade, it had served its purpose. But tonight, it would end. He reached his tiny rented room and pulled out the metal box hidden under the floorboard. Inside were the remnants of his real life, His identification card, a gold wristwatch engraved with the Adeyemi family crest, and a set of keys to a luxury car that had been collecting dust for months. He touched the crest, tracing the lion's head engraved above his name. The motto beneath it glimmered faintly in the lamplight, strength with mercy. He whispered, "Father, forgive me, but mercy alone won't save her." Then he reached for his phone and made a call he hadn't made in months. "Hello, Chief Tunde Adeyemi speaking," came the familiar deep voice on the other end. Kola exhaled. "Father, it's me." There was a long pause. "Kola, my son, where have you been hiding?" "Working," he said. "Learning." A short laugh echoed through the line. "Still pretending to be poor?" "Not anymore," Kola said quietly. "Tomorrow I need your help. I'm bringing someone home, the woman I'm going to marry." His father was silent for a moment, then said simply, "If she makes you this brave, then she must be worth it." Kola smiled faintly. "She is." After hanging up, he sat by the window until dawn. The city began to stir, horns, market cries, the clatter of carts. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and glistening. At exactly 8 o'clock, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom rolled out of Adeyemi Mansion, its paint shining like obsidian. Inside sat Kola, no longer in his faded uniform, but in a deep blue agbada embroidered with silver threads. The gold watch on his wrist caught the morning light as he gripped the steering wheel. He wasn't driving to guard a gate today, he was driving to break one. As he turned onto Amara's street, people stopped to stare. Hawkers paused, mid-shout. Taxis slowed and children ran after the car, yelling, "Big man, Don land!" When the car stopped outside the Okoye compound, Uncle Benedict sat in a plastic chair under an umbrella, sipping tea and humming to himself. He froze when he saw the car door open. From it stepped a man who looked nothing like the poor gatekeeper he had mocked, tall, composed, wearing confidence like armor. "Kola Adeyemi," he said, voice steady. "I've come for Amara." Uncle Benedict blinked, confused. You must be mistaken." Kola's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No mistake. I'm here to ask for her hand." Laughter burst from the veranda. Mama Ngozi stepped out, wiping her hands on her wrapper. "You, the gatekeeper. What kind of joke is this?" Kola turned slightly, and before he could answer, the sound of sirens filled the street. A convoy of black SUVs pulled up, and from one stepped Inspector Balogun, the Lagos police commissioner himself, Kola's godfather. He saluted. "Good morning, Mr. Adeyemi. Everything arranged as you requested." The entire compound went silent. Uncle Benedict's teacup fell from his hand and shattered on the ground. Kola looked at him calmly. "Now let's talk about Amara." Uncle Benedict stammered. You're not a gatekeeper." "No," Kola said evenly. "I'm the man your greed tried to humiliate, the man your niece loves, and the man who will make sure she's free before this day ends." The older man's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The neighbors gathered around, whispering. Kola turned to the inspector. "Search the house." "Yes, sir." As officers fanned out, Kola's gaze swept the compound, every muscle tense. Somewhere behind those walls, he knew she was waiting, bruised but unbroken. And as thunder rumbled again in the distance, he whispered to himself, "Hold on, Amara. The time for mercy is over." The sudden arrival of the police convoy threw the entire street into chaos. Neighbors peered from their windows, whispering behind curtains. Market women abandoned their stalls just to watch. Lagos had seen plenty of scandals, but this uniformed officers saluting a man once known as the poor gatekeeper was the kind of story that would live in gossip for weeks. Uncle Benedict Okoye stood frozen, the color draining from his face. He stuttered, "Oh, officers, what's happening? We haven't done anything." Inspector Balogun ignored him, raising his voice for the officers. "Search every room, find the girl." Within seconds, policemen spread through the compound, boots thudding against the tiled floor. Doors were kicked open, cabinets flung wide, drawers searched. The air smelled of fear and wet dust. Mama Ngozi stumbled forward, her voice trembling between defiance and panic. "You can't come here like this." "This is private property," Kola turned to her, calm but commanding. "Madam, private property doesn't cover crimes." "Where's Amara?" Mama Ngozi's eyes darted away. I don't know what you're talking about." "Then perhaps the inspector can help you remember." The woman flinched as two officers stepped closer. "Wait," she blurted. "Please don't hurt me." She's inside her room." "Which one?" "The back room near the kitchen." Kola didn't wait for permission. He sprinted past the officers, the hem of his blue agbada brushing the puddles on the floor. The corridor was dark, narrow, smelling faintly of smoke. At the end stood a wooden door sealed with a metal chain. He kicked it once. The lock didn't budge. He kicked again. This time the hinges cracked and the door burst open. Inside, Amara sat on the floor, her wrists tied, her face pale and streaked with tears. She blinked at the sudden light. For a second, she thought she was dreaming. "Cola," she whispered, disbelief trembling in her voice. He dropped to his knees beside her, cutting the ropes with his pocket knife. "It's me," he said, voice breaking. "You're safe now." She stared up at him, eyes wide. "But your clothes, your car," he smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I told you I'd come for you. I just didn't tell you who I really was." Before she could reply, the sound of shouting echoed from the front yard. "Sir," an officer called. "We've found Chief Emma's men outside the compound. They claim they came for the bride." Cola's jaw tightened. "Keep them there," he ordered. "No one leaves." He helped Amara to her feet. She staggered, weak but determined. "You shouldn't have come," she murmured. "They'll turn on you next." He shook his head. "They can try." When they stepped back into the courtyard, all eyes turned toward them. The sight silenced the crowd, Cola standing tall in his royal agbada, holding Amara's hand like a man shielding something sacred. Uncle Benedict dropped to his knees immediately. "My son, please forgive me," he begged, voice shaking. "I didn't know who you were. I swear if I had known." "That's exactly the problem," Cola interrupted quietly. "You only respect people when you know what they're worth in money. But you never stop to think of what they might be worth in kindness." The man bowed his head, trembling. "Please, sir. I was desperate." Cola's gaze hardened. "You were cruel. There's a difference." Mama Ngozi rushed forward, kneeling beside her husband. "Forgive us. We thought you were poor. We didn't mean any harm. You locked your own niece in a room," Cola said. "You planned to sell her like property. You call that no harm?" Tears rolled down the woman's cheeks. "Please, don't send us to prison. We'll do anything." Inspector Balagun stepped forward, his face cold. "Mr. Adeyemi, what are your orders?" Cola turned to him. "Take them in. Let the law decide." "No!" Mama Ngozi screamed as two officers grabbed her arms. Uncle Benedict tried to stand, but another officer pushed him down. As they were led away, Uncle Benedict turned desperation in his eyes. "Cola, please, you have everything now." "Let us go." Cola's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You had everything too, a home, a family, her trust. And you threw it away. This isn't about me. It's about justice." The officers dragged them out, their cries echoing through the street. Amara stood trembling beside him, unsure whether to cry or collapse. "They're gone," she whispered. "For now," he said softly. "But it's not over. You'll stay with me and my family until the case is done. You're safe there." She blinked at him. "Your family," he smiled faintly. "My real family. I think it's time you met them." That afternoon, the Rolls-Royce glided through the gates of Adeyemi Mansion, a sprawling white estate surrounded by manicured gardens and fountains shaped like lions. Amara pressed her face to the window, speechless. The world she was entering looked nothing like the one she'd come from. When the car stopped, the doors opened to reveal Chief Tunde Adeyemi, a tall, regal man in white agbada, and beside him, Lady Funky Adeyemi, elegant in gold lace. "Welcome home, my son," the chief said warmly. "And this must be the young lady who made you disappear for months." Amara bowed nervously. "Good afternoon, sir." "Good afternoon, Ma." Lady Funky's smile faltered the moment she noticed Amara's simple dress and tired eyes. Her tone cooled. "This is her, yes," Cola said. "Her name is Amara Okoye." Lady Funky's brows knit together. "Okoye. As in what background?" "An orphan," Cola replied. "She grew up with her uncle and aunt. She's humble, hardworking, and she saved me from losing my faith in people." His mother's face stiffened. "A poor orphan. You expect to bring that into this family, Mother?" "No," she snapped. "You've embarrassed us enough." Disguising yourself as a laborer was madness. But this is worse. Do you know what people will say? That the Adeyemis have lowered their standards? Chief Tunde exhaled slowly. "Funky, listen, I will not listen," she shouted, voice rising. "I built this home with dignity. I will not watch you destroy it by bringing a market girl through our gates." Amara stepped back, shame burning through her chest. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Cola turned sharply to his mother. "She's not the one causing trouble." "You are!" Lady Funky's eyes widened. "Excuse me," Cola's voice was steady, but his hands trembled. "You taught me to value compassion. You told me once that money doesn't make a person noble, character does. So why now do you sound like the people you used to pity?" His father smiled faintly, pride flickering in his eyes. "That's my son." But Lady Funky wasn't moved. "You think quoting me will change the truth? Love doesn't feed a family, Cola. You need a woman of class, not pity." Cola met her gaze. "Then you've forgotten where we came from." Father told me how you met him. You were a schoolteacher earning peanuts and he married you because he saw your heart. That same heart is what I see in Amara. For a long, heavy moment, silence filled the hall. Then Lady Funky turned away, her voice like ice. Do whatever you want, but don't expect my blessing. Cola nodded slowly. I wasn't asking for it. I was only hoping for your kindness. She gasped, softly, wounded by the words, but too proud to admit it. Chief Tunde placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You've made your choice, my boy, and I'm behind you. Cola looked at his father, gratitude softening his features. Thank you. Amara stood quietly beside them, uncertain whether to smile or cry. She had dreamed of love, not war. But as she looked at Cola, strong, unyielding, even before his own mother, something inside her shifted. For the first time, she believed she was worth fighting for. That night, Lady Funky sat alone in her bedroom, staring at an old photograph, her younger self in a cheap dress, smiling beside Chief Tunde on their wedding day. She sighed deeply, whispering to the empty room, Maybe I have forgotten who I was. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon again. The storm wasn't over yet, not for Cola, not for Amara, and certainly not for the truth that still slept beneath the surface of their story. The next morning rose gray and restless, the kind of dawn that carried bad news on its wind. Inside the Adeyemi mansion, silence spread like mist. The servants walked softly, glancing nervously between Lady Funke Adeyemi and her son Cola, who sat across from her at the long dining table. The scent of fried yam and eggs filled the room, but no one had the appetite to eat. Cola's father, Chief Tunde Adeyemi, finally broke the tension. We'll go to Amara's house tomorrow to formalize things, he said, voice steady. It's the honorable way. Lady Funky set her cup down sharply. There's nothing honorable about marrying into disgrace. Cola sighed, patience wearing thin. Mother, please, she raised a hand. Enough. I won't argue. I've made myself clear. Her words hung like cold smoke. Cola pushed back his chair. Then I'll do it without your blessing. Her eyes hardened, but before she could reply, a maid appeared at the doorway. Sir, she said timidly, a visitor is asking for you. She says it's urgent. Cola frowned. Who is it? She said. Her name is Chioma Okoye. The room went still. Chioma, Amara's cousin. What could she possibly want? Send her in, Chief Tunde said after a moment. A few seconds later, Chioma stepped into the dining room, her once proud face pale and anxious. She clutched her bag as if holding herself together. Her eyes darted between Cola and his parents. Good morning, she murmured. Cola's voice was calm but wary. What are you doing here, Chioma? She took a shaky breath. I came to warn you, Lady Funke frowned. Warn him about what? Chioma's voice broke. My parents, they're lying. Amara isn't safe. Cola stood instantly. What do you mean she isn't safe? They're in custody. Chioma shook her head rapidly. They bribed someone last night. They were released. They said they were going to finish what they started. The words hit him like thunder. Where? I don't know, she said, crying now. But before they left, I overheard them talking to Chief Emma. They mentioned a warehouse outside town near the abandoned docks. Please, you have to help her. Cola didn't waste another second. He turned to Inspector Balogun, who had been stationed outside since the previous day. Get your men, he said, voice steel. Now. Within minutes, the black convoy roared out of the mansion, sirens slicing through the morning air. Cola sat in the front seat, fists clenched, his mind a storm. Chief Tunde rode beside him, silent but grim. You were right to hide who you are, his father said quietly. Now use who you are to save her. The road to the docks was long, cutting through the industrial side of Lagos, where rusted ships leaned like forgotten ghosts. Rain clouds gathered overhead again, heavy and mean. As they approached the warehouse district, Inspector Balogun signaled for silence. We move carefully, he ordered his men. No shooting unless necessary. Cola stepped out the wet ground, sucking at his shoes. In the distance, he saw a faint light flickering inside one of the old buildings. A sound, muffled, desperate, drifted through the rain. He froze. That's her, he whispered. The inspector gestured. Two officers moved to the sides, while another kicked open the door. The hinges screamed as the team stormed in, flashlights slicing through the darkness. What they found stopped them cold. Amara sat tied to a chair, her hair-matted lips, cracked eyes, half closed from exhaustion. Beside her stood two men with machetes, startled by the sudden intrusion. Police, drop your weapons, the men panicked. One swung wildly. An officer dodged and tackled him. The other tried to run but didn't make it far before another officer's gun cracked a warning shot. Cola rushed forward, cutting through the chaos. Amara, her head lifted weakly. When she saw him, her eyes widened in disbelief. "Kola!" He dropped to his knees, untying her hands. "It's over," he whispered. "You're safe now." She fell against his chest, sobbing. "I thought you wouldn't come." "I promised I would," he murmured, holding her tightly. Outside, rain pounded the corrugated roof, drowning out the sounds of the city. But inside the warehouse, justice was unfolding fast. The captured kidnappers were handcuffed and dragged out. One of them, trembling, began to talk. "Please, sir, don't shoot. It wasn't our idea. Her uncle paid us." Kola's eyes narrowed. "Where is he?" "He left this morning," the man stammered, "with his wife and daughter. They're trying to escape by bus to Onitsha." Inspector Balogun barked into his radio. "All units alert the terminals. Block every road out of Lagos." Amara clung to Kola's arm, shivering. "He won't stop," she whispered. "He'll keep coming." Kola cupped her face gently. "Then he'll find out what happens when you chase evil into the light." The officers escorted them outside. The moment Amara felt the rain on her skin, she began to cry harder, not from fear, but from relief. The storm was washing away everything her soul had carried for too long. They drove straight to the police station. The kidnappers were interrogated one by one, and their confessions spilled like floodwater. They spoke of payments, threats, and one horrifying truth: Benedict and Ngozi had ordered them not just to keep Amara hidden, but to make sure she never came back. When Kola heard this, something inside him snapped. "They wanted her dead," he said, his voice low, trembling with restrained rage. "Yes," the inspector confirmed grimly, "and they will pay for it." That night, the police spread out across Lagos in search of the fugitives. Roadblocks went up at every exit, bus stations were checked, and the entire city seemed to hold its breath. By dawn, they found them. The family had reached the Mile 2 bus terminal, trying to blend into the crowd. But even in disguise, fear betrayed them. An officer spotted Benedict's nervous glance, and within minutes, the station was surrounded. "Freeze!" the officer shouted. "Hands where I can see them." Benedict tried to run, pushing people aside, but he slipped on the wet pavement and crashed to the ground. Ngozi screamed. Chioma, clutching a small bag, dropped it and raised her hands. "Please, I didn't know. I didn't do anything." The officers didn't care. They cuffed all three and shoved them toward the waiting van. As the sirens wailed, the crowd began to murmur, some spitting, others shaking their heads. "Wicked people," one woman muttered. "Imagine trying to kill your own blood." By the time they reached the police station, the sky was burning orange with sunrise. Kola and Amara were waiting outside, sitting side by side under a large umbrella. When the van pulled up, Benedict's eyes met Kola's. "You did this to me," he shouted. "You ruined my life." Kola stood slowly. "No," he said evenly. "You did that yourself." The officers dragged them inside. Ngozi sobbed, Chioma cried silently, and Benedict's curses faded down the hallway. Amara exhaled shakily. "It's over," she whispered. Kola turned to her. "Not yet, but soon." Later that morning, a doctor treated Amara's wounds. She refused to rest until she saw Kola again. When he finally walked into the room, she smiled weakly. "I told you you're too good for this world," she said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I'm not good enough to lose you." For the first time, she laughed, soft and genuine. It filled the sterile hospital room like sunshine after rain. That night, Lagos slept under a calm sky. In the holding cells, the Okoys awaited trial. In the Adeyemi mansion, Lady Funke sat alone, thinking of the girl her son had nearly lost, and of the pride that almost made her part of the enemy. And in another part of the city, Kola stood by the window of Amara's hospital room, watching the lights reflect on the lagoon. He whispered to himself, "Love isn't weakness. It's the only thing that ever made me strong." Behind him, Amara stirred. "What did you say?" He turned and smiled. "Nothing you don't already know." The courtroom was so still that even the ceiling fan seemed afraid to move. Rows of benches filled with curious Lagosians whispered behind their hands, waiting for the trial to begin. Reporters set up cameras, their flashes, ready to capture every tear and twist of justice. It wasn't just another family case. It was a scandal that had shaken the city. Businessman and wife, accused of kidnapping and attempted murder of niece. At the front, Judge Falana, a tall woman with silver hair and calm eyes, adjusted her glasses. "Bring in the accused." The doors opened with a heavy clang. Benedict Okoye and Ngozi Okoye shuffled, and handcuffed heads bowed. Behind them walked Chioma, trembling, her eyes red from nights without sleep. The crowd hissed under their breath. "Quiet," the bailiff shouted. On the front row, Kola Adeyemi sat in a black suit, expression unreadable. Beside him, Amara Okoye, still pale but stronger now, clasped her hands tightly in her lap. Her heart thudded in her chest as her uncle glanced her way. His eyes were no longer furious. They were hollow, like a man who'd already seen the walls of hell. The prosecutor, Mrs. Ajayi, rose. My lord, the state charges these defendants with conspiracy, attempted murder, illegal confinement, and embezzlement of inheritance. A murmur swept the room. The judge nodded. Proceed. Mrs. Ajayi turned to the jury. This is a story of greed disguised as family. When Amara's parents died in what we once thought was an accident, their brother, this man Benedict, took custody of her and her inheritance. But rather than protect her, he abused her, stole her property, and finally tried to end her life when she found love. She pointed toward the defense table. They called it discipline. We call it evil. Benedict's lawyer, a thin man with slick hair, jumped up. Objection. That's inflammatory, the judge raised a hand. Overruled. Continue. Mrs. Ajayi smiled faintly. Thank you, my lord. We will present evidence, bank statements, property deeds, and witness testimonies that show years of theft and deceit. We will also play a recording from one of the kidnappers confirming who paid them. The defense attorney sneered. And what will you call the girl's relationship with a rich man she hardly knew? Love or convenience? Kola stood abruptly. My lord, if I may, the judge cut him off gently. Mr. Adeyemi, please wait until you are called. He sat, fists clenched, jaw tight. Then came the first witness, Inspector Balogun. His testimony was short but damning. We found Miss Okoye bound in an abandoned warehouse, he said. The men confessed immediately. They said they were hired by Benedict Okoye and his wife. Payment was made through a middleman traced back to the defendant's account. The prosecutor nodded. Thank you, Inspector. That will be all. Gasps spread across the room. Benedict shifted, eyes darting. The judge turned to him. Do you have anything to say for yourself? He hesitated, sweat glistening on his forehead. My lord, I was angry. I didn't mean for things to go that far. Amara rose suddenly, trembling but resolute. You beat me, uncle. You locked me in a room. You were ready to marry me off to a man old enough to be my grandfather. And when I said no, you planned my death. He flinched at her words. I was trying to protect our name. Our name, she echoed, voice shaking. You lost your name the day you forgot your humanity. The room erupted in murmurs again. The judge banged her gavel. Order. If there are more outbursts, I will clear the court. Kola reached for Amara's hand, grounding her. She took a deep breath and sat again, her shoulders shaking. The prosecutor called the next witness a financial auditor. The man presented documents showing property transfers from Amara's late father's company to Benedict's account, all forged signatures. The evidence was irrefutable. Finally, Mrs. Ajayi turned to the defendants. You stole from your own blood. You tried to silence the only person who could expose you. Why? Benedict looked up, eyes empty. Because I was jealous, he whispered. My brother had everything. I thought if I took his wealth, I'd feel whole. But I was wrong. His voice cracked. I killed my own peace. I destroyed my family. His wife burst into tears beside him. He forced me, she cried. I didn't want to do it. Please believe me, the judge's voice was firm. And yet you helped him plan it. You locked the girl yourself. You did not stop him. That is guilt by choice. Ngozi collapsed onto the table, sobbing. The gavel struck once, echoing like thunder. The evidence before this court is overwhelming. This is not a mistake of passion or ignorance. It is cruelty sharpened by greed. She paused, looking at Amara. But from the ashes of such cruelty rises something remarkable courage. The judge turned to the jury. Your verdict. The foreman stood. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom exhaled as one. The judge's tone softened slightly as she delivered her sentence. Benedict and Ngozi Okoye, for your crimes against this young woman and against decency itself, you are hereby sentenced to 20 years in prison without parole. May you use that time to remember what family is supposed to mean. Benedict's knees buckled. Guards rushed forward as he shouted, No, I'm sorry, please, but no one listened. The chains clinked like punctuation marks on his downfall. When the noise faded, the judge looked toward Amara and said quietly, Miss Okoye, you have endured enough pain for several lifetimes. May justice bring you peace. Amara bowed her head, tears spilling freely. Thank you, my lord. The trial ended just before sunset. Outside, the sky blazed orange and gold as if the heavens were burning away the last traces of the storm. Reporters crowded the steps, shouting questions. Kola Adeyemi, how does it feel to see justice served? Miss Okoye, what's next for you two? Kola smiled faintly and answered only one question. Love without truth isn't love. Today, truth won. He guided Amara through the crowd, shielding her from the flashes. When they finally reached the car, she collapsed into the seat, exhausted. It's over, she whispered, voice raw. Almost, he said. One more thing to fix. She looked at him confused. What's that, my mother? That night, Lady Funky sat alone in her living room, the television still replaying the court coverage. She turned it off when Cola walked in, Amara following quietly behind him. Lady Funky looked up, her expression unreadable. So it's true. The girl survived. The world knows her name. Yes, Cola said. And she deserves to. Amara bowed respectfully. Good evening, Ma. For a long moment, Lady Funky said nothing. Then she stood slowly, her voice trembling. I watched you on the news, the way you spoke for her, the way you held her hand. I saw the kind of man your father raised. Cola's brow furrowed. Mother. She turned to Amara. I was wrong. The words hung in the air like a prayer. Lady Funky's eyes shone with tears. I let pride blind me. I thought love was something we could buy, not something we could learn. But today you reminded me what it means to be human. She reached out, taking Amara's hands. Please forgive me. Amara's tears fell silently as she nodded. I already have, Ma. Cola smiled through the ache in his throat. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel like a museum. It felt alive. Lady Funky turned to her son. If she'll still have you after everything this family's done, marry her. With my blessing. Cola exhaled, the weight lifting from his shoulders. Thank you, Mother. Lady Funky managed a trembling smile. Now go. You've both been through enough darkness. It's time to step into the light. Outside, the first stars broke through the clouds. Cola wrapped his arm around Amara as they walked out together, the night soft and forgiving. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The city around them buzzed with life, but for once Lagos seemed quiet, like the world itself was pausing to let love breathe. The next morning, Lagos awakened under a forgiving sun. The streets that had once echoed with gossip about the poor gatekeeper now buzzed with a different story, the billionaire who chose love over wealth. Newspaper headlines screamed it in bold fonts, Justice for Amara Okoye Greed, Falls Love Rises. But for Cola and Amara, the headlines meant little. They weren't chasing applause, they were chasing peace. Inside the Adeyemi mansion, the atmosphere was lighter than it had been in years. The scent of roasted yam and fresh coffee drifted through the hall. Servants smiled again. Even Lady Funky, once a fortress of pride, hummed softly as she arranged flowers in a vase. Cola stood by the window watching the morning light spill across the compound. Amara joined him, her hair free, her eyes alive again. I can't believe it's over, she said softly. He smiled. It's not over. It's just beginning. Amara laughed lightly. You sound like a movie line, he grinned. Maybe our story will be one someday. But beneath his calm exterior, Cola was uneasy. Justice had been served, yes, but scars didn't fade as fast as headlines. Amara still woke from nightmares, some nights crying his name. And Cola, despite his strength, still carried guilt. Guilt for having lived comfortably while she suffered in silence just a few streets away. Later that afternoon, Chief Tunde joined them in the garden. He wore a white kaftan, clean and crisp, with the quiet dignity of a man who had seen everything. Children, he said, it's time we made this official. Amara blinked. Official. He smiled warmly. You think the court's verdict is the end? No, my dear. It's the beginning of a new family. Cola, your mother and I have spoken. We want to meet with Amara's surviving relatives to formally ask for her hand. Cola hesitated. Her uncle and aunt are in prison. Yes, Chief Tunde said, nodding. But there are elders in her family's hometown. They deserve to bless this union. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sir. You've already done so much, Lady Funky interrupted gently from the veranda. We do this properly, Amara. You are not a pity case. You are family now. Amara's voice cracked. Ma! Lady Funky crossed the garden and cupped her cheek. Call me Mama from today. It was a small word, but it broke Amara's last wall of fear. She nodded, crying freely. 3 days later, the Adeyemis' convoy rolled into Nsukka, the quiet eastern town where Amara's parents were buried. The roads were lined with red earth and mango trees, their branches heavy with fruit. Children chased after the cars laughing, while elders watched from verandas, murmuring prayers. The Adeyemi family arrived at the compound of Chief Obinna, Amara's late father's cousin, and one of the family elders. The old man greeted them warmly, his white beard shining in the sun. So this is the man who risked everything for our Amara, he said, shaking Cola's hand firmly. Your story has reached even the radio stations here. The ancestors must be proud. Amara smiled shyly. Thank you, Uncle. They sat under the mango tree while palm wine was poured into calabashes. Birds chirped overhead. For a while, the conversation was easy stories about Amara's childhood laughter over her mischievous days helping in the market. But when Chief Obinna grew serious, everyone fell quiet. "My daughter," he said softly, turning to Amara, "you've seen pain that could have destroyed you. Yet here you sit alive, graceful, stronger than the ones who wronged you. We are proud." He turned to Kola. "And you, my son, you showed the world that love is not about status. You have my blessing." The family chorus of amen followed. Lady Funky wiped her eyes discreetly. For the first time, she understood what humility truly felt like. After the formal blessings, Amara led Kola to her parents' graves behind the old family house. The air was still the earth cool beneath their feet. 2 headstones stood side by side, simple but well kept, surrounded by wild lilies. She knelt down, brushing dust from the names. "Mama, Papa," she whispered, "you can rest now. Justice has been done." Kola placed a white rose on each grave. "They would be proud of you," he said softly. "I'm proud of you." She looked up, eyes glistening. "You saved me, Kola." He shook his head. "No. You saved me first from a life without purpose." They sat there for a long time, just listening to the wind through the trees. That evening, the Adiemas hosted a small celebration in the village square. Drummers beat rhythms that seemed to shake the stars themselves. Women danced in bright wrappers, men clapped and sang praise songs. Children shouted Amara, Amara, while she laughed and danced barefoot, her spirit lighter than air. Even Lady Funky joined in, clapping to the beat, her gold jewelry glimmering in the firelight. "I haven't danced like this in 20 years, she said breathlessly. Chief Tunde chuckled. "Maybe it's time you remembered how to live again." As night deepened, Kola took Amara's hand and led her to the center of the square. The drums softened. "Amara Okoye," he said, his voice carrying through the crowd. "You've taught me the meaning of strength, of grace, of true love. You showed me that kindness is more valuable than gold." The crowd cheered softly. He knelt. "Will you marry me, not for the headlines, not for the wealth, but for the life we can build together?" Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears fell, but her smile was radiant. "Yes, Kola Adeyemi. 1,000 times yes." The drummers exploded into rhythm again, and the square erupted in joy. Children danced, elders lifted their hands to the sky, and firecrackers painted sparks into the night. From the crowd, Lady Funky wiped her tears again. "He's his father's son after all," she whispered. Chief Tunde smiled. "No, he's his own man now." As the night wore on, Kola and Amara slipped away from the noise and found themselves near the river that bordered the village. The moon hung above the water, casting silver trails across its surface. Amara leaned against his shoulder. "Do you think we'll ever forget all this?" He shook his head gently. "No, but that's a good thing. We shouldn't forget the pain that taught us how to love." She looked at him for a long moment. "You sound like your father," he laughed quietly. "Maybe wisdom is hereditary." She smiled, then whispered, "I used to think God forgot me. But maybe he was just waiting for the right person to find me." Kola turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I used to think love was a weakness. But you taught me it's the strongest thing in the world." The river rippled as the wind passed, carrying their reflections away into the night. In the distance, the drums faded into laughter. Above them, the stars shimmered like 1,000 witnesses, silent and approving. Back in Lagos, the news cycle would soon move on. But for Kola and Amara, life was no longer about headlines. It was about peace. They stood there hand in hand, 2 souls scarred by the same fire, yet remade by it, proof that no amount of suffering can bury love born from truth. As they walked back toward the light of the village, the moon slipped behind the clouds, but neither of them noticed. They didn't need the moon anymore. They had each other. Morning returned to Lagos with the warmth of forgiveness. The city stirred awake under golden light, the sound of horns, vendors shouting, prices and roosters crowing between compounds. Life had gone on as it always does, but for Kola Adeyemi and Amara Okoye, this new dawn meant something far deeper. It was the beginning of forever. 3 months had passed since their engagement in Suka. The Adeyemi mansion, once cold and echoing with tension, now pulsed with excitement. Seamstresses moved in and out carrying fabrics. Decorators arranged flowers. Chefs rehearsed recipes for a guest list that stretched from Lagos to Abuja. Lady Funke was the most restless of all. "This is not just a wedding," she declared as she supervised a team arranging golden drapes along the staircase. "It's redemption. Every detail must speak of grace." Chief Tunde chuckled, sipping his morning tea. "You've changed, my dear," she smiled faintly. "No, I've remembered who I was." Outside, Kola stood in the garden with Amara going over final arrangements. She wore a simple lilac dress, her hair braided in long curls that glimmered under the sun. "Are you nervous?" he asked. Not nervous, she said softly. Just grateful. After everything, it feels like I'm dreaming. He touched her cheek. Then let's never wake up. Her laugh was gentle, but her eyes glistened. You always say things like that when you're trying not to cry. He grinned. Maybe I am. The following day, Lagos stood still for what many called the wedding of the year. The Adeyemi residence had been transformed into a palace of light and color. Gold and ivory tents stretched across the courtyard. Musicians tuned their talking drums, while caterers carried trays of steaming jollof fried plantains and peppered goat meat. Outside the gates, curious onlookers pressed forward to catch a glimpse of the bride who had once been the orphan from the restaurant. Television crews were there too, not for scandal this time, but for celebration. Inside, the bride prepared quietly. Amara sat before a mirror as her bridesmaids adjusted her veil. The dress shimmered like moonlight, simple, elegant, but regal enough to silence any doubt about her place in this world. Lady Funky entered holding a small box. The room fell quiet. My dear, she said softly, this belonged to my mother. I've been saving it for the right woman to join this family. Amara opened the box. Inside lay a delicate gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a dove. Mama, she whispered, voice trembling. Lady Funky smiled, her own eyes wet. A dove means peace. You brought peace back into this house. Wear it proudly. Amara stood and hugged her, whispering, Thank you, Mama, for everything. Outside, Kola paced near the altar set beneath a massive baobab tree. He wore a perfectly tailored cream suit with silver embroidery. But it wasn't the suit that drew attention, it was the look in his eyes. A man who had faced storms and found common love. Chief Tunde stood beside him, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. You fought battles, I never did, my son. Today you win the only one that matters. Kola smiled. The one for love. When the music changed, the crowd turned. Gasps rippled through the air. There she was, Amara, walking slowly down the aisle, her arm linked with Chief Obina's. Sunlight filtered through the canopy above, casting rays of gold around her like a blessing. The drummers softened the air, thickened with reverence. Kola couldn't breathe. Every step she took was a heartbeat closer to destiny. When she reached him, the priest smiled knowingly. Shall we begin? The ceremony felt timeless, vows spoken through tears, rings exchanged under trembling hands. Do you, Kola Adeyemi, take Amara Okoye to be your lawfully wedded wife? With everything I am, Kola replied, voice breaking. I do. And do you, Amara Okoye, take Kola Adeyemi to be your husband? Her smile glowed through the veil. I do with all my heart. By the power vested in me, the priest declared, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. The crowd erupted in applause. Talking drums rolled like thunder and ululations filled the air. Kola lifted the veil and kissed her, not with passion born of possession, but with gratitude born of survival. Lady Funky wept openly, clutching Chief Tunde's arm. They did it, she whispered. He smiled, his voice soft. No, they became it. The very meaning of love. The reception that followed stretched late into the evening. Under strings of fairy lights, guests danced, barefoot laughter echoing through the compound. The smell of suya and palm wine mingled with the sound of drums. Even Chioma, once complicit in her parents' cruelty, was there, humbled, redeemed, wearing a simple blue gown. When she approached Amara, she bowed her head. Thank you for inviting me. You didn't have to. Amara took her hands. Forgiveness isn't for the one who wronged you, Chioma. It's for the one who wants peace. Chioma's eyes shimmered. Then I'll spend my life earning it. Later that night, when the last guest had gone and the lanterns flickered low, Kola and Amara slipped away to the garden. The air was cool, filled with the hum of crickets. Amara leaned against him. Do you ever wonder what life would have been if you never left your mansion to become a gatekeeper? He smiled. Then I'd still be rich and completely empty. She looked up at him. So all that suffering was worth it. He nodded. Every bruise, every night I questioned my choices. Because each one led me here to you. They sat in silence for a while, watching fireflies dance above the pond. Finally, Amara whispered, You gave me a home. He took her hand. No, you gave me a purpose. As the moon climbed higher, she rested her head on his chest. Promise me one thing, she murmured. Anything. Never forget where we came from. Let our story remind people that love and integrity still matter. Kola smiled into her hair. We'll make sure of it. The Adeyemi Foundation for Hope to help orphans, widows, and families like yours. We'll build something good out of all that pain. Amara lifted her head, smiling through her tears. You already have. The The wind carried their laughter through the night, rustling the palm trees, as if the earth itself were applauding. Weeks later, their wedding photos spread across social media, not because of wealth, but because of the caption Amara wrote beneath one picture. "Once I gave a poor man an extra piece of meat. I didn't know he'd one day feed my soul." The post went viral. People called it the gatekeeper's miracle. Schools invited them to speak. Churches preached their story as a parable. But Kola and Amara stayed humble, focusing on building their foundation and their family. A year later, in the same garden where they first confessed their love, Amara placed a baby boy in Kola's arms. The child yawned, tiny fingers curling around his father's thumb. "What should we name him?" Kola asked softly. She smiled. "Chidi, it means God exists." He kissed her forehead. "He truly does." As the sun sank into the horizon, the world felt right again, not because of wealth, not because of power, but because love had kept its promise. Kola looked toward the sky and whispered, "Mama, Papa, thank you for watching over us." Amara squeezed his hand. "Forever," he smiled. "Forever." And there under the glowing Lagos, twilight, their story, born of deception, refined by fire, and crowned by love, finally found its peace. True love isn't measured by what we own, but by what we give when no one is watching. Kola and Amara's story reminds us that kindness, even in the smallest act, can change a life and sometimes destiny itself. Wealth fades, beauty, ages, and status can fall overnight, but a good heart remains, a treasure no storm can wash away. When you choose compassion over judgment, forgiveness over pride, you rise above circumstance and become the light that others can follow. What about you, dear viewer? Have you ever helped someone expecting nothing in return and later realized it changed everything? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and let's keep spreading stories that heal, inspire, and remind the world that love still wins.